Hi there, again, it's Ricky from Moshville Times. I'm taking a wee trip to nostalgia again. I'm with a very good friend I haven't spoken to in a number of years, but it just feels like it's yesterday. He's the bassist vocalist of a band called The Rain from Newcastle, and his name is Mr. John Cook. So it's always a pleasure seeing you again, John. How you doing, mate?
Good, always good. Still cracking on. Yeah.
So it's been a bit of a crazy last 6 months in the world. So have you been working and things like that, or have you been in furlough or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, I've been pretty much working every day. I've been really lucky, quite grateful, really. So I've had less work, but I've had enough work to pay the bills. So you kind of think, well, that's a lot better than most folks. So you kind of think, well, fair play. You know, I'm happy enough with that. Yeah. You know, hopefully it'll turn around eventually. I think it'll be a while, mind. I think just looking at the state of things, I mean, just even going for a pint now is a bit of an ordeal, you know. So it'll be a while. But yeah, you know what? I've been all right. We've been fine. Family's been fine. So I'm pretty grateful, to be honest, mate. You know, it's fine.
That's great to hear. So you've been working from home, or are you still going back into the office, or
about half and half? Yeah. So I mean, like a lot of people now, you can work digitally, you know. So you just fire up the laptop, on you go. So, but where I work actually in Gateshead is only it's about 8-9 miles away from where I live. So half the time I've been going in on my bike. So it's been really cool. And you just bike in, do a bit of work. There's no one in, and where I work is a big old building, so actually the whole social distancing thing's not a problem. Yeah. So it's old fashioned, but it kind of works because there's maybe 4 or 5 people and we're all separated. We're doing everything right, so it's cool. It's fine.
Yeah, I think one of the things about this pandemic, though, is made companies and businesses move forward. It's made them realise the beauty of technology and how to use technology and expand. I think the whole world of working like Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in an office, I don't think that's going to be the same anymore. Well, certainly not.
I think you're right. Although it is interesting, you know, because I'm never that convinced about this whole Amazon culture, you know, where you can get everything like 5 seconds after you ask for it. You know, so I've actually, at home now, I've banned Amazon. So we only use Amazon for real boring shit. So like storage containers and just shit like that. If we buy anything like substantial, I just won't use it. Yeah. So like books for the kids, or I mean, I still buy a lot of vinyl. I just won't use Amazon.
Quite right.
So yeah.
So the reason for this interview then is, as I said, I'm taking a wee trip down Nostalgia Road. So am I right in saying then that The Rain was formed in '91 and that you released a demo in the same year?
I think that sounds about right. Yeah. I mean, it had a sort of strange beginning because Mick and I were in a previous band, which was a bit more sort of like traditional metal, bit doom, more melodic doom sort of stuff. And I think we used to listen to loads of that or Mick in particular used to listen to loads of that really riffy thrash. So stuff like Exodus and Annihilator and stuff like that. And I think with the best of respect to the guys who were in the band at the time, they weren't necessarily keyed up for it. So I think we just thought, well, actually that band is great fun, great mates, we're not going anywhere. But we fancied the crack of the music. You know, we're young, you know, you're like 19, you think it's dead easy, so we're like, right, fuck it, let's just do it then. So off we went. And the first demo that we did was actually recorded in Mick's college. So he was doing like a music course. So Mick's, I mean, and still is actually really, really talented, sort of engineer and stuff like that. Yeah. And so he just did it. So we did it with a drum machine, but Mick's very talented with stuff like that. So he programmed it. I did bass vocals, he did the guitar. We had another fella who was playing guitar, who was very, very good. And it just sort of came out. But it was really weird because we'd never done any gigs. We'd never really tested it. So we just thought, let's just do it. So we did it, you know, and it was quite interesting, and it got really, really good response.
Yeah. So it was the early 90s were like the height of extreme stuff like thrash and death metal.
Aye.
So with you and Mick having history together with Vox Populi, the band that you were in, was it easy to get other members of the band at that time?
In theory, you would think so, but I mean, we're all a bit the same. We're right fussy buggers, you know. So we went through about 5,000 different members, you know, and it was like, I don't know what, like, I think at the time though, it was all that mattered. So if you couldn't fit them all, we're pretty fucking ruthless, really. We kicked people out for shit reasons. Yeah. We actually kicked the guitar player out because I think I was playing for his football team and I got kicked off his team, so we kicked him out of the band. So it's pretty ruthless. But what really made us think about it was we kind of managed to get some really good reviews, and that was awesome. Yeah. But we had two guys in the band who were settled-ish. It was actually the Underground Titans thing that made us really say, oh, actually, hang on. You know, we're going to be playing with these guys who have got a bit more, they've got more experience. They're probably going to be a bit better and stuff. And the other two guys, we just didn't think would be at that level. Yeah. So we happened upon Robbo, Mark Robinson, the guy who played on the first two albums. Robbo was in a band called State of Shock, who'd done a lot of touring, played with like Cendrix and all sorts of bands and stuff. And Robbo was great, and he was just what we needed at the time because he was a bit older, very, very disciplined, used to practice like 3, 4, 5 hours a day, a really good lad. And it was Robbo who sort of said it about the drummer at the time, listen, this guy, I think he's shit, you know, unprofessional, get rid of him. And then he suggested Ronnie McLean. So Ronnie actually did the Underground Titans tour as a favour and then never left.
You tried your best though, but it never left.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah. But just going back to the demo, like I always remember getting the demo, Act of Penance, and it was the opening segment of Prokofiev. And then
yeah.
It was, but that open section of Prokofiev, I was like, oh yeah.
yeah, man. Yeah, I mean that's a real Mick thing, you know. Mick was really into all that stuff at the time. It's cool. I was totally into it, but and I think everyone at the time had an intro tape, didn't they? It was like the thing, you know, like all extreme bands that have an orchestra and all this shit. So we were just like, oh yeah, fine, yeah, let's do that. So, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's quite good. I think Mick likes a lot of the drama stuff, like the quite dramatic movies.
Yeah. So following on from that, then, so how often were you able to meet, and whereabouts did you record? Where did you practice?
So we did that Dependence, then we did Mixed College. The one after it, we did in a studio in Newcastle. But when we got to that stage, like we were full on serious. You know, we used to rehearse. At least twice a week, like no bullshit, you know, it was get in, get the work done. We would rehearse the music with no vocals so that we could get all the music all tight, and then with vocals, and then all together. It was very sort of professional. And then, you know, any sort of fun stuff was outside of that context. So kind of regularly we'd all meet, have a beer on a Friday night and sort out what we need to sort out. But rehearsal was rehearsal, man. And that it's not uncommon for us in the old days to rehearse 4 times a week if we had something on.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to go back to that Penance demo again. One thing that the Raiden didn't do was short songs.
Yeah.
So was there a reason for having like 7, 8, 9 minute songs?
Oh, do you know what, Ricky? No, honestly, no. I think Mick wrote the rump of the songs on the first demo, if not all of them, actually. I think, yeah. And Mick, I tell you this himself, he's like a complete non-conformist. Like Mick doesn't give a shit about anything else. So he just used to write what he used to write, you know. And sometimes actually the stuff that we put out were the sanitized versions, because the Mick versions were like these fucking epics. But such good fun. But yeah, I mean, it was not intentional. It's just kind of the way it came out. Yeah. Actually, I think I wrote Wings of Sorrow. So, but I was a bit the same, you know, like at the time, all I used to listen to, well, almost all I used to listen to was doom metal. So if it wasn't slow, it was, I went through a stage where if it wasn't super slow, I wasn't really right bothered about it.
I was about to mention Cathedral, but but yeah. So how did it feel like getting the demo out there and receive the reviews that it got, and then from people all over the place wanting to buy it? How did that feel for you?
It's like unbelievable, really. You know what I mean? It was so like kind of unexpected. So I mean, my background for quite a while before that was I was heavily into tape trading. So yeah. I'd be sort of, I used to swap mostly Doom stuff like Trouble, Candlemas, and all that stuff. So I'd be swapping tapes, trading tapes. So I was the guy who was, looking at the classifieds in Metal Forces every month, looking to see what I could buy and stuff. So I was thinking, and for a while I couldn't believe it was us, and it was really strange because, I mean, in those days you used to get checks. So every day you'd get a load of fucking checks for like £2.50 or whatever, So it was just great.
And the bounce.
This is absolutely bizarre. And funnily enough, about 5 years ago, I was in the Lake District, and I bumped into our old postman, and he's like, "Oh, aren't you that bloke who I used to deliver all those letters to, Rain or something?" I'm like, "Oh, aye, that's me. I'm surprised you recognise me, but aye, yeah, that's me."
I bet he hated you for all the parcels that you had to do.
Yeah, I think you probably did.
Do you remember, like, how far people were wanting? Like, were there any fans from Eastern Europe or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think on the demo side, most of it was probably European. Yeah. So a lot of English stuff, but a bit further afield. But of course, in those days, if you wanted a review, you'd have to send your tapes, or sending them to wherever was a bit, was quite expensive. So a lot of British stuff, a fair bit of European stuff though.
Yeah. I was speaking to Simon of In Extremis the other night there, and he was saying about, well, maybe I have to explain to the younger crowd what tape trading is.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah.
It was like you would have to send a £1 note or a blank tape, and you'll get a copy of the demo and that kind of. Those were
absolutely brilliant. I mean, it was just great to be involved with it, because for a bit before that, I was kind of like massively into sort of bands like Hellbastard and stuff like that. So, and they came from that, more punk, but but it's same kind of principles. So I just thought it was great.
Yeah. So when it came to the songs, then, with you being the bassist vocalist, did you do most of the lyrics for the songs?
In the early days, so on the demos, first demo was all me. I think probably on the second demo was probably roughly 50-50 me and McLean. So Ronnie's got a good eye for a song. He likes his lyrics. There's Ronnie, So he used to come up with some great, and we kind of quite aligned. So we sort of come from very different kind of backgrounds in terms of what music we like. But he could write. He still can write really good lyrics.
Yeah. So what would you say the point of The Rain was? What were the lyrical themes about, especially the ones that you wrote, say, for example?
Mine were all a bit abstract. When I was younger, it was, truth be told, it was just copied off. Boy, Trouble, Candlemas, well, I mean, Trouble, that religious thing, but like that kind of doom and gloom and all life is lost stuff, it was like, I'm kind of, it wasn't really that deep, not really, So, I mean, there was some when we were younger, there was some I'm angry at the world stuff. So things like Wings of Sorrow were all about, this kind of like fix it bastards type vibe, very young, very naive. So there's a bit of that. So but Ronnie's always been a bit more abstract and stuff. He's really into stuff like The Doors and things like that. So he's kind of coming at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Thanks for that, John. So you then released your second and final demo, This Silent Nation, in 1992. So did you do anything different from the previous demo? This one, had you matured as musicians, or did
it was played almost entirely live. So we used to rehearse all the time, you know, full on, you know, for it was 4-track demo, and we'd go in at least twice a week and play those bloody 4 songs about 1 million times. But that's what we wanted. We wanted it to be good. We wanted it to be tight. And it's recorded on a low budget because it's a demo from a local band. But in some respects, that's one of my favourite recordings that we ever did.
Yeah.
Because it's far from perfect. And actually the vocals sound too much like that guy from Believer, and I didn't do that on purpose. But it's got this real vibe about it, which is just some blokes playing music. And you can like it or not like it, but it's really cool. And actually, I think when we recorded the first album, the songs that were re-recorded on a better budget aren't as strong as they are on the demo, because they don't have the same vibe.
Yeah. It's moving on to the first album. With your 2 demos then, with the touring that you did, it led you to being signed up by Moshville Records. So
Aye.
How did it feel for the band to be signed to an actual record label?
Aye, it was great. I mean, do you know, it's interesting, Ricky, because if I had my time again, I don't know what my approach to record companies and stuff would be, you know, but I mean, at the time, it was just the pinnacle, wasn't it? You know, you look at the early 90s, and if you wanted to do anything, you had to have a CD in the shops, and that seemed like your gateway to going on the road. And I think, to be honest, it was at the time, you know what I mean? Yeah. If we'd rang up some German promoter and say, oh, can we come and do a show? They'd just be like, well, actually, no, fuck off, kind of thing. So having it out was great. I mean, I think because we were young and naive at the time, again, you know, super naive, we just sort of expected the record company to just sort everything out, you know, and we're quite like that.
Yeah. I take it when Mr. Liam just got in touch and you just got that contract in front of you, you just went, we're going to...
Aye, yeah. I mean, the guy who pushed to sign us, a Dutch guy, and he was a really good guy, actually. He fought really hard to get us signed. And at the time, Moshville were really pushing this like power metal band, this American power metal band called Wicked Mariah, and they were on tour like Metal Church and stuff. They were shit, but they spent a lot of time on them. So, but this guy really pushed for us. He was always really grateful. I'm still kind of friends with him, you know, on Facebook and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was great. It was great.
So it must have been a proud moment then to actually get your physical CDs and your name and your book.
It was great.
All over it.
Aye. The only wee problem that we had, which was a bit of a tinker at the time, was Moshville got bought by a company that owns a shed load of live radio recordings in the States called King Biscuit. You can see that you get bootlegs and stuff of like Judas Priest and the kind of like older bands. And there was a rain in the States at the time, so they made us take the off.
You're always the rain in my eyes.
Always, yeah. And it was like, I think if it was now, you know, I mean, I'm 48 now for a start. So if it was now, I think I'd be like, well, no, fuck off, you know, let's have a fight, you know. But at the time, you're like, oh, hang on, this American person says if we don't take the off, we can't put the album out, you know. So it was, but I've got somewhere at home, I've got a test pressing of the first album with the rain on it. So, because the European guys had sort of pressed up a few for reviews and stuff. So, yeah. I've still got that. But, I mean, it wasn't our doing. You know, we liked it the way it was. Yeah. But that was a bit of a bummer.
Anyway, you know. Aye. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
You went on to record a further 2 albums then in your career, with the third and last released by Bleeding Heart Records.
Yeah.
Had the lyrical themes changed from your first demo to this third album, and who wrote the
lyrics? I bet. So, I think by the time we got the album, when we did Control Over Anger, I think the stuff that I wrote, stuff like Last But One and stuff like that, it's really pissed off. It's not really directed at anything. It's just like very, very angsty, very sort of probably not helped by listening to too much Crowbar all the time. But it's like that real angsty kind of stuff. But if you,
I was actually wondering if it was the third album and the final album, was it kind of how you were feeling with the band and how things were?
It was definitely I don't know about unraveling, but it wasn't the same as it was. I mean, when we had the same four people from 1992 to 1996. So we had me, Mick, Ronnie, and Robbo, and for a long time we were like the Four Musketeers.
Yeah.
The only thing in life that mattered was the band. Everything else was, secondary by a mile. And it did change the dynamic. Although, to be fair, the guy that came in on Control Over Anger, Andy Metcalf, he's a good lad and he's a fucking good player as well. But it was just never quite fit the same way. And I think Andy gets excluded a lot. And it's not intentional. I think it's just because me, Mick, and Ronnie are still really good mates.
Yeah.
It was a really weird time, but it definitely wasn't the same. Yeah, I think things were changed. Some music was changing, definitely, and we were different. Like I was, kind of wrestling with the same priorities that everyone gets when they're a bit older. Flat, mortgage, stuff, and I didn't know how to join it all up, so I definitely didn't. I thought I performed all right on the album, but it wasn't the same level of intensity, because it just wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think I was probably the first one to not perform to the same level, in all fairness. But after that, I think maybe Ronnie and Mick also kind of lost a bit of sort of, as they weren't quite as determined as they were.
Yeah.
But it happens, I think if we were going to go on, we'd have had to have a complete rethink.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that I think, certainly me, like I say, I wasn't really pulling as much weight as I did do. I mean, in the old days, I used to go to work for the minimum amount of time and live the band, answering mail and doing stuff, writing songs, ringing gigs, and that kind of fell off, and it had an impact on the other lads, I think. And we did some stuff. We did really try. I mean, we had a different vocalist for a while. Yeah. We did two shows, one show in Austria and one show in Italy with another singer, and it was good. But it was just the vibe wasn't quite the same anymore.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thanks very much for that, John. So how were the songs constructed with the Rain? Were they the main songwriters in the band, or was the Rain a band for everybody?
Probably, I would say probably maybe 60% planned and 40% jammed. So the simpler stuff on Exit Close and Control Over Anger, it was jammed out stuff, mixed stuff, things like I Think Therefore I Am is completely planned. It's got to be, it's got to be that way because the riffs are all complicated and stuff. So, and Mick would take away, drive that and stuff. But some songs you just jam them out.
Aye.
The last song on Control Over Anger, The Reason for Everything, that mellow thing, we just played that live when we recorded it. It's completely live.
Yeah.
No overdubs, no takes. And so it was kind of a bit of a mix.
Yeah. So with the four of you, being into you were saying the majority of the time it was the same lineup. So when you went to the studio, then was there sometimes a lot of negotiating because you all had different influences, or was there any altercations or anything like that, or was it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the classic one was when we did Exit Close, because Robbo was in favour of a lot of control, whereas I think perhaps Ronnie would just wanted to let it go, crazy mad. And I think the one thing that actually that's probably the biggest regret of the whole band is that the way that we recorded Exit Close, if we'd gone in and banged it out, if we'd been really brave and said, right, we're just going to play this thing till we get it right, it would have been great. I've got that Exit Close did really well on college radio in the States.
Yeah.
So Mausoleum had a little panic and wanted to record something. So we went into a studio in Germany and kind of did almost like a live undead thing, you know, like where it's like live but not really live.
Yeah.
And the crowd noises are shit, so no one could possibly ever hear it. But the versions of the songs are fucking great, and they're like we used to play them. Like, yes, you know, like the first verse and the second verse are slightly different speeds because that's what happens when you play live. Yeah. But it's banging, and I think if we just had almost like that kind of punk rock thing and just went, right, fuck it, let's just do it, it would have been really good.
Yeah.
And I think Mick occasionally tinkers with things with his gear and stuff, and he actually had a couple of mixes of some of the Explosive tracks faster, and they're great. So, but I mean, there's nothing you can do. I mean, it's not a criticism of Paul Johnson, who was great, but that's also what he does. It's like that mid-90s Paul Johnson thing. There's a lot of very controlled death metal type stuff, you know, like, well, I don't pick on any names, but he did a lot. I mean, he did Cathedral as well, which was completely different, but he did a lot of like that controlled stuff, and I think we tried to put kind of Rain thing into that. Yeah. And I think, but we were quite headstrong as well, you know, like if someone had said, oh, why don't you do that, we'd have all kind of gone into a little humph and said, no, you know, we're not doing that. But I think if we'd had someone wise who'd maybe seen the band a couple of times, yeah, probably they would say, no, you want to do that, do that. Don't worry about, you know, it's got a couple of mistakes or it's got a couple of things, do that. Yeah. And I think it would have, we never ever played music to be popular, but it would have been more successful.
If only you could turn back time, eh?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you know what? I love all of it, and I still do. You know, it's kind of, you know, just thinking honestly about what might be different. I mean, because when you listen to Control Over Anger, that is played like that. But I think we just lost a little bit of that Four Musketeers spirit. It does, you know what I mean? So it doesn't just quite have there's some songs on Control Over Anger that are great.
Yeah.
Sure.
So influences from the first demo then to the last recording had obviously changed. So do you think that this may have brought forward the demise of the Rain as people were moving on to other forms of music?
Do you know, it's funny, isn't it? It's a funny, because forever, I think I've pretty much principally listened to the same sort of music. So I did then and I do now, which is probably in the main either doom and gloom still now, you know. So Crowbars, Inviters, Cathedral, Candlemas, chuck in a bit of like Celtic Frost, which isn't that far away. Yeah. And then the other side, which is like the real kind of traditional stuff, like Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, stuff like that. With a bit of, I personally like really extreme stuff, like kind of a bit of grindcore and stuff like that. The other lads don't, but I do. And for a while, I think we were kind of quite tuning into like sort of Dream Theater type stuff, but that kind of diminished as we went on. Yeah. I think I started listening to a lot of Dream Theater when we were touring a lot, because if you're playing on a bill with 5 death metal bands, you kind of need something else in the daytime, you know, to like not listen to death metal all day. So yeah. But mine were principally the same, and I think one of the criticisms that we used to get was particularly prevalent in the US, which I'm not really sure why. Was like, I read a few things where, and actually I think there's some of them still live on the internet now, where people say, no, that's a load of shit, it's like a Machine Head rip-off. And I was thinking, well, hang on a minute. Well, I mean, there's nothing you can say because people are entitled to their own opinion. Of course they are, but where they say, well, a little bit younger than Machine Head, and, you know, if anything, all those influences come from like that riffy thrash, like Exodus or Annihilator. So if some things sound a bit like Machine Head, it's absolutely not intentional. Yeah. You know, I'm sure it was Machine Head copying you guys. Yeah, that's right. I should have rang Flynn up and told him I'd kick his fucking head in.
So when you're at this point with control over anger, like were you getting tired yourself? Did you think that the rain had reached the furthest it could go?
Do you know? I think the thing that was definitely different was in with the first two albums, I would give a tape or something to anybody who would listen. Anybody, you know, tapes and flyers. And Bleeding Hearts, they wanted to do it a bit differently. And you know, the two guys that run Bleeding Hearts is like one of the guys from Venom and their manager. So you kind of like listening and thinking, all right, okay, right, we'll do that. And they didn't really do their bit, but we didn't really do, or really actually mostly me, to be fair, didn't do the things that they signed us because of what we'd done. You know, like, so when you had this idea of creating your own vibe, like we didn't do it as much. I think like the gigs on the tour and that was still really, really good. And some of the gigs that we did from that album were the best gigs that we've done. But we mostly me really, because I was kind of the principal person who used to do that, so mostly me didn't perform as well. But I think the vibe was kind of dropping off, and also, you know, I mean, interest in metal generally was a lot lower, man. You know, like, I mean, I remember we did a show in Annaberg in 1996 or 7 and Morbid Angel were playing in the next town, and you know, I think they only sold about 80 tickets, and you think, whoa, you know, so metal generally I think was on a bit of a, so you had your mega bands like Pantera and stuff, and they were just the most popular things on earth, but metal was in a bit of doldrums.
Yeah. So did you sell more tickets than Morbid Angel that night then?
No. But we had a local support band who was really popular and it wasn't that far off. So, you know, it just sort of shows you, you know, but I mean, I remember seeing Napalm Death in Newcastle, and there wasn't that many people there, you know, just interest in that sort of music, it sort of really dropped off.
Yeah. Thanks very much for that, John. So you were the bassist vocalist for the band then.
Aye.
Who were your influences? Was there someone in particular that you looked up to?
You know, I think I would love to say all the usual funky ones, you know, like Geezer Butler and stuff like that. But I think, I mean, my playing style is it's four on the floor stuff. But if you kind of look at, you know, Ronnie's massively dexterous drummer. You know, he doesn't necessarily come from an extreme music background, so he kind of brings a lot of stuff. Mick's very, very disciplined rhythm player, so I think it would have been difficult to have the bass kind of wandering all over and doing many funky things. So the people that I kind of like and still do now, people like Ian Hill from Judas Priest, who like you never think, oh wow, he's an amazing virtuoso and stuff, but he's just such a good, consistent player, and he makes it what it is.
Yeah.
So, and that was kind of my job really, to bring the bottom end. So I like a lot of technical bass players, and you know, I'm still listening to like Rush, Dream Theater and stuff like that. But for me, I kind of like those unsung guys.
Yeah.
You know, Ian Hill, even people like Tom Araya is a better bass. You know, he doesn't get a lot of credit for being a good bass player, but actually he pulls it in.
Yeah. Thanks.
David Vincent's a really good bass player.
Yeah. So it's probably a difficult question for you to answer, but did you have a particular highlight of being in the band with the Rain? And maybe what was like the biggest gig that you played? Like
I can tell. Well, the absolute highlight, and I think the other lads would say the same thing. It isn't anything. So you know, like we did some pretty big gigs, and we toured at the Gates, and we played the Astoria. We actually did the very, very first with Full Force Festival when it wasn't the massive thing that it is now. But I think by quite a country mile, the best gig we ever did was just after Robbo left. we were struggling to find a replacement, and we did a gig in Austria, a festival, just a local thing, with just the three of us, and it was the best we'd ever played. Never ever played like that ever again. And it was just, I think, all this sort of frustration, probably a bit of uncertainty about what was going to happen. Would we be able to find an extra person? Would it work? Would it not work? And it was electric. And I think if Mick and Ronnie were here, they would probably say the same thing.
Yeah.
We're absolutely drained, and it was in this absolutely gorgeous little village in Austria. It was really weird. And the funniest thing the day after is we sold a load of t-shirts, and they all had that absolute fucking heaviness on the back. We sold loads of these fucking shirts, and it's like a kind of touristy place. And the next day, there's all these kids walking around with these really abusive shirts on. But yeah, I think hands down that would be probably the. I mean, there's some great stuff. I mean, we played the Marquee Club a couple of times. Playing with At the Gates was great.
Yeah.
So quite a few good things.
Yeah. That's excellent, thanks. So moving on, as you previously mentioned, like you were part of the Underground Times tour in 1999. So how was the communication between bands back in the day and getting used to
great. I mean, most of the donkey work was done by Ferenc from Nightlord and Jose from Gomorrah.
Yeah.
And they pretty much sorted it out. I mean, to be fair to them, all we had to do was turn up and smile. I mean, they were great. You know, they did such a good job of organising it. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that tour. I liked all the bands.
Yeah.
I think it was quite a good representation of bands that were, you know, doing well at the time, you know. And I know there's a few moans about, oh well, there should have been like a proper headliner, like a My Dying Bride or Anathema or something. But yeah, it was great, you know. Like, so yeah, it was really good. It was really, really well organised. And do you know what? Most of the gigs were really good, man.
Yeah,
really good.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. So what do you think about the Rain recordings now? How would it fare today? And when was the last time you actually listened to them yourself?
Yeah. Blame me. I tend not to listen to them on my own, just because you sort of pull them apart a bit. So, but I'm still good friends with, still very good friends with Mick and Ronnie. So, I mean, we haven't seen each other for a while because of the current shenanigans, but it's not uncommon to land somewhere, hoist about 10 million cans, and of course, once you're on your millionth can, on go the Rain albums, you know. So, and that's now is the best way to listen to it, when you're in a great mood, pissed out of your head, so that your brain doesn't pull it apart. You know, so like, because I'm really bad for it, because I'm not that keen on my vocals. So when you listen to it when you're sober, you're like, oh, so, but and you're so like, oh god, it spoils it, you know. But when you're a bit more relaxed and stuff, you know, like then it's good.
So when you started out then in the early 90s, were there bands in the underground that you thought could actually make a name for themselves?
I mean, you had sort of phenomenons, didn't you? So like, you had like Hellbastard when they did their first album, and they were selling out pubs, and they were great, and they're still like, I still listen to Hellbastard all the time. I love them. So yeah. I suppose there was, their kind of fan base turned a little bit, didn't it? Because they kind of did that more technical thrash thing, and the old crusties didn't like it so much. I think for a while, I think Gomorrah looked like they might do something. And you know, you've got to hand it to Jose. Like, he's a driven guy. You know, he's a good lad. So they did. Well, I liked, although it probably out of all the bands, it's something I would listen to the least at the time. But Decomposed on their day were vicious. That's, you know, and I've seen them a couple of times when you thought, fucking hell, like, you know, they could really do something. And I'm not surprised about it. I think someone re-released one of their EPs and stuff, and I'm not surprised, because they were they were really, really good. And I think there's actually talking about Underground Titans, I think Incarcerated were hugely underrated. They were wicked. Yeah. I think one of the problems not problems, but what maybe worked against them, they were like an even more progressive version of Anathema, so it was probably a bit more difficult for people to latch onto it, but I watched them a few times and they were wicked, man. Really, really good. Yeah. So I really like them. Trying to think of them.
It was quite funny. Simon and I were talking about them the other night. Incarcerated, I thought they were going to go places, but again, I think death metal had reached its peak, and then it was everybody were changing now.
I think they went all full circle, didn't they? I mean, they did the Bonewire thing. But I like that album though. I really like it, but it's just compared to where they were, it's kind of like pretty much like more like, it's not like Alice in Chains, but it's more like that vibe, So I mean, I bought a copy of it, put it on. I can't believe this. But I think for a while, like they were really good, and you could tell the reaction of the people in the audiences, the in the know type people could recognize it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the problem for a lot of us as well is kind of. I'm actually these days quite a big black metal fan. I listen to quite a bit of it, but it didn't wipe out bands.
Yeah.
Like it sort of wiped out that mid-level, and I think probably we didn't, we were kind of a bit unfortunate in that as well, but we weren't the only ones. I think if you were at a certain level of popularity, like say someone like Anathema or something, you were kind of okay, but underneath it created a few challenges. I had conversations with people that said, "Oh well, I think you're all right, but you're not black metal, so I'm not interested." And you're like, "Oh, okay, right, fine." So, I think, because for me, whinging, the classic black metal bands I totally get. So, like someone like Emperor, or just unbelievable musicians, Mayhem. It's like it's like a vibe. You can love it or you can hate it, but it's got a vibe and it's really good. But that kind of sort of almost like third generation black metal bands were shite. Like a lot of them were shit, really. And you just, we played with so many of them in Europe, and you're like, oh fucking hell. So that sort of, I think that didn't help. That didn't help metal, because it just sort of wiped it out a bit.
Yeah. Thanks.
Although I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
I quite like a lot of it.
Good man. So do I. I've only got a couple of questions left for you then. So who's the rest of the reign now then? So do you say that you've been keeping in touch?
Probably the most active musically is Ronnie. So, Ronnie still is like, he's an awesome drummer. He's like huge, probably one of the most talented people I think I've ever played with. Yeah. And he does a lot of classic rock type stuff, like local gigs and things like that. But he's got his own fan club. You got a lot of people on the local scene, they'll go just to see him, which is great. He deserves it. It's brilliant. It's died a bit of a death at the minute because there's no live music in pubs. So, and particularly me and Ronnie, every year we usually go and see Y&T in Nottingham. I'm not sure why. So we'll go and see Y&T in Nottingham, and we've got a set format. So there's a point to this, honestly. So we'll go to Hooters. So 29 pints in Hooters, a couple of metal bars. By the time we get the metal bars, we've formed a new band. So, and I think at some point in the next few years that probably will happen.
So we have Mr. John Cook.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about it quite a lot. So we've both got a bit on at the minute, so it'll not happen immediately, but we have talked about it when sober. Mick's maybe not so much into playing music now. He's a lot into the tech side, so he does a lot of like events management and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The other guys, don't think Robbo plays. Andy Metcalf still plays. He was in a band with Mantis from Venom for a wee while.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's doing now, but Andy will probably resurface at some point.
Right. So you're going to have a wee bit of black metal and a wee bit of grindcore in your next release then?
No, I think it'll be more like crowbar with fiddly drums. I don't know, because I mean the thing is I've still got a desire to do something at some point, and I think now I could manage it with my other commitments a lot better than I could when I was younger, because it just made me a bit more objective about stuff, you know, and I wouldn't be shitting myself worrying whether Kerrang liked us or not, or what. I wouldn't be in, you know what I mean? If they like it, great. It's no Kerrang now, isn't it? But like, you know, would it be more fun and you'd make it fun?
Yeah. Because
that's what you do. You just say, well, there it is, you know, and that would put some energy into it. So I think at some point that'll happen.
Yeah. Well, like I said, this is the last question for you, John. So.
Aye.
So before the internet then, magazines and fanzines were the places to find out about new bands and trends. So now publications are replaced with thousands of websites catering for all genres. So do you think that some of the passion has been lost, or do you think that the internet has been good for the music scene?
Oh, that's a great question, that.
Thank you. In
my younger days when I was a band, I mean, I was a total tape trader, you know, like It was wait for the postman every day to see what wonderful thing that I got, you know, like things like man, I can remember getting Count Raven's first demo, and it was like just so exciting.
Wow.
And a bit of me thinks that part of what was cool was actually having the physical objects.
Yeah.
Do you know, so like having the tapes and stuff. I mean, personally, now I've kind of replicated that I never lost the interest in buying music, but now I'm kind of a bit of a vinyl saddle, you know, so I'm like down the market buying vinyl and looking for shit, and I've got the whole family doing it. Even my mother-in-law goes to charity shops. She's got a list of like Judas Priest stuff and that I still haven't got, so I've got everyone into it. So I think the physical stuff's brilliant, but I think you kind of can't knock the idea of like being accessible. I just don't know if things are too accessible. So, or whether, I wouldn't know, because I've never really tried to promote anything digitally, but it all looks a bit easy. Like now you turn Facebook on and you've got adverts from 39,000 bands all telling you that they're the best band that you've ever seen. Yeah. You know, whereas in the old days, you know, you get a note from someone saying, hi, whoever, and have a listen to this, and it was good, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think I'll probably have a go in the next few years.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
Good and bad. I think it's got its plus points, but I also like the fanzines that used to get the 50-page black and white pages and stuff.
Aye. Well, you know, I'm a metal guy, so my experience not that wide. But I really respect punks for keeping that stuff alive. Yeah. You know, in the band that Mick and I had after Rain, so we did some more stuff, and we played that Wasted Festival in Morecambe.
Yeah.
Totally like fish out of bloody water, you know, like fucking metal band playing this punk thing. But the punks were ace and they're really nice. But shit, they've got that. They never let that die, you know. And they've still got paper fanzines, and they're still really into it, and they're still buying merch. And punks are great. And funny enough, I went to see New Model Army last December, and they've got that sort of DIY punk thing still going, and I like it. You know, I bought fanzines and stuff. I mean, I don't even know fuck all about punk, but I was just like, I want to have one of these, you know. So, and I like that vibe.
Yeah.
It's got to. But, you know, I mean, I'm the ancient now, so, you know, that could be just me being sort of nostalgic or whatever.
You're only 27, don't give us it. Well, John, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. think I'm going to do more of these nostalgia things because it always brings back good memories. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you at Edinburgh venue and stuff, like stomping about that stage.
Oh yeah. Is that still there?
It's still there, yeah. But also like just chatting with Simon and stuff like that, and he remembers you and he remembers phone stuff. I'm going to have to keep on doing these, and I'm thoroughly enjoying.
Yeah.
So thank you once again, John, and you too.
Pleasure, no problem.
All right, take care, mate.
Cheers, mate.